What's up, people? I'm Shaggy the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 2 of my ranking of Iron Maiden's studio albums. Welcome to the 90s. I think it's safe to say, I already did the 80s. I think it's safe to say that I think Iron Maiden fans can probably generally, 99% of them agree on two things. Two things. One, Iron Maiden ruled the 80s. That was their decade. 7 albums, all of them great, maybe an A+ tier, A tier for 2. I would say the rest are all S tiers. I made a video about that. Hit it out of the ballpark, like doubles, triples, a couple home runs, grand slams, just epic, epic decade. They ruled the 80s from start to pretty much finish. 90s, they didn't. They didn't rule anything. They lost their way in the 90s. What goes up must come down. All good things must come to an end, at least for a brief while. The 90s were not a good decade. Only 4 albums. I'm going to just keep these 4 here, not contaminate 80s or anything that came afterwards. I'm going to talk about these 4 in the order that I think I would rank them, and then I will take this list of 4 and mix it with the 80s list and see if any of these break into the top and can be better. They're not. None of them are better than any of the 80s albums. I'm going to give that away right now. But yeah, connection with Zappa. The connection I had was they have an awesome cover of Cross-Eyed Mary, Jethro Tull, Eddie Jobson, Zappa, Jethro Tull. But apparently, I think Harris, there's videos of maybe Harris and maybe other members wearing Zappa t-shirts. I don't think it was Dave, but maybe it was Harris and Adrian were wearing Zappa t-shirts in a video or some rehearsal or some concert. So obviously they're aware of the existence of Frank. But yeah, let's do it. There's 4 of them. Let's get on with this list. Number 4 in the 90s is their 10th studio album overall. The X Factor came out in 95. I'm sure I'm not the first person to say it. I'm sure other people have both said it and probably written it. But apparently, the X Factor was Bruce Dickinson. Because Bruce Dickinson leaves, Blaze Bayley, that's just a fantastic name, lead singer of Wolfsbane, he takes over on vocal duties. And for some reason, the entire band just kind of loses energy. The sort of spiritual, driving, galloping, high energy core that is Iron Maiden just dissipates. It's gone. Don't know where it is. Everything about this album, there's 11 songs, 10 of them open up with slow, drawn out atmospheric intros. I don't think there's a single, I think it's not until we hit the last song where we actually get an opening riff to a song and not some weird, ominous opening. These are my notes for this album because I never listened to this album, so I had to take extensive notes. Slow opening, kind of funky on the second song, Lord of the Flies, but still slow. Man on the Edge, there's a galloping groove after a slow intro. Slow ballady intro, another slow intro in caps, another slow intro, slow opening, a little more interesting. Slow intros. No, there's nothing here that is at the speed or there's no adrenaline rush. There's just, I don't understand where the energy and drive of this band went. They do have a different producer. Their sort of longtime producer has left. There's also a production problem on here. It sounds like they're recording in a huge room and one guitar player's in the far west wall, bass player's on the far east wall, the drummer's on the north wall, somebody else, another guitar player's on the south wall, the lead singer, I don't know where he is, he's wandering. They're reading sheet music and it's just all right, guys, go. And it's just, there's no energy, there's no life, there's no connection. This is a really disappointing album. I will say this. The last 3 songs give me hope. There is 2 albums with Blaze Bayley on it. The last 3 songs on here, the aforementioned, no, I didn't. The 3 of the last 4 songs, Blood on the World's Hands, kind of a little more interesting. The opening's a little more dramatic and interesting. Some nice grooving in there. Just some. There's a really nice sort of bass drum synth type of thing where the bass and drum are doing stuff and the synth kind of lays over. That's kind of cool. The song Edge of Darkness, slow intro, but the up tempo sort of gallop that they go into almost reaches 80 levels of intensity, kind of. And by far, for me, the most interesting song on this album is the last album, The Unbeliever. Actually has an opening riff, like a song should have. And then it kind of feels like it's an 8-minute song. Like they had 3 or 4 shorter songs that they didn't know how to finish. So they took these parts and kind of cobbled them together to kind of make a really kind of interesting, cool, all over the map type thing. Kind of a neat pounding drums, kind of a good guitar solo. Like there are ideas that work throughout The Unbeliever that give me hope that now, at the time I didn't know there was going to be a second album, but I was like, okay, if there is a second album, maybe this is hope that they figured things out and that these were the last 3 songs they recorded. There's a song called 2 a.m. in there that's not that good. But yeah, man, I just can't recommend this album. It's plodding, it's slow. It just doesn't have that Maiden energy or that spark. I wanted to find one of these songs on YouTube, like a video for it, and play it on a faster speed and see if it sounded better. Did not do that yet. I might do that and get back. But yeah, I just do not like this album. And I'm not a big Blaze Bayley fan. He's just not Dickinson. Like, if you like Bayley, that's cool. He's not Maiden. It never worked for me. But yeah, that's easily my number 4 in the 90s. If you like it, great. Tell me how to get into it. Tell me what song I should learn to love. I want to like this album. I want to like all albums. But I don't like this one. The X Factor, my number 4 in the 90s. Number 3 is Virtual 11, Virtual X1. The second Blaze Bayley album came out in 1998. This was the first Iron Maiden album, which came out in real time. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait to get that until I really just have money I want to burn. But I was right about one thing. The tail end of the previous Blaze Bayley album and how things started to get interesting and momentum started to build. Yeah, the first track on here, Futurial, Future with an AL at the end. It's the best thing this version of the band I think ever did. It's high energy. It's not Maiden high energy. We're not Aces High. We're not just early stuff. We're not that. But it's kind of a good song. And it's kind of catchy. And it is like a reason to play this album again because it like immediately hooks you. The second song, The Angel and the Gambler, also starts off with like actual like a riff in the beginning, this just kind of energy and like ideas. It's not this slow buildup. Have you heard the Can song, Waiting for the Streetcar, in which Mooney sings, I think it's Mooney, yeah, Mooney sings probably 570 times, I'm waiting for the streetcar, waiting for the streetcar. It's like 2 other lines, but it's literally like 8 minutes of waiting for the streetcar. That highly repetitive song seems like a haiku compared to this not as catchy or good, highly repetitive song. Repetitive song. The Angel and the Gambler has like, yeah, it is ridiculous. It is at 9:51. There's like a 3-minute song on here that's really good. Don't know why it goes to 9:51. I think this is just a much better album. Like the Don't Look to the Eyes of a Stranger, really cool sort of proggy thing at the end that's kind of interesting and kind of fun with some really good guitar lines. There's a couple really good guitar solos on here. There's a lot more energy on this album. I still don't think Blaze is like, I don't get him as a singer. Like, I always have to try to imagine what he looks like because his voice is so like, I just can't. Sometimes I hear like a definitive voice and I'll imagine the singer. And even if he doesn't look anything like that, his voice has character. I don't know what character Bayley has. I just feel bad. I just think this is a much better album. It's still not a Maiden album. I don't think there's a Maiden sound in here. There's a couple good solos, a couple maybe like galloping grooves. I think Maybe because I'm used to the sound, it just sounds a little bit better than the previous one. So yeah, I'm giving this one like I've listened to this one way more than I've listened to the X Factor, just because I do like that lead off track, and I'll kind of stick around for a while to see how long my interest holds. Even though the Angel and the Gambler usually kills it, though I do like the music of that song. But yeah, Blaze gave it a try, and I just feel bad for the guy. I mean, you come into Iron Maiden, like an iconic, a Mount Rushmore of metal bands, and you replace a Mount Rushmore of heavy metal singers. Like Dickinson is like you, if Dickinson wasn't real, he would be the lead singer in a great movie. You have to create a Dickinson. And you give him a backstory where he's like got a PhD and he flies airplanes and he's like absolute genius and all this stuff. Like people like Dickinson really don't exist, but we do have one in Iron Maiden, and you can't replace him. And the name Blaze Bayley, it almost seems like a movie writer made that name. I don't know. Sorry, guy. Sorry, Blaze. I mean, you can sing. It's just circumstances. You ended up in Iron Maiden. I'm sorry. That's my number 3 for the 90s. Virtual 11. Number 2 in the 90s is 1992's Fear of the Dark, their ninth. This would be Dickinson's last for a while until the end of the millennium after the 2 Bailey albums. This is generally regarded like, and this kind of surprises me, is ranking higher is the one that's number 1 on my list that preceded this, their 8th album, which I kind of like. But the reasons I like it, I'm assuming, are the reasons people don't like it, which is why they rank this one higher than that one. This is a good album. One, you love having Dickinson just because he's Bruce Dickinson. The musicianship and the playing, and just the fact that this is Iron Maiden, is kind of what makes it interesting, because I don't think the songwriting is as strong as even on that previous album, which is usually ranked as their bottom of the list by most people I've seen rank their albums. Kind of overall, kind of mellow. Definitely nowhere near as mellow with all the slow openings as the X Factor. 2 fantastic songs. Be Quick or Be Dead, the opener, just comes riding in. Like it's literally saying, hey, be quick or be dead. We're here to kill you, or you better run. So you're going to shoot us or we're going to kill you. Like right off the bat, it's just like high energy attack. You got the gallop, just no nonsense guitar work. I think it's a really strong opener. The next song's a little bit poppy. The opening just doesn't sound From Here to Eternity, doesn't have a Maiden-esque vibe. Afraid to Shoot Strangers, got another ballady opener, over the we eventually drop into sort of a mating gallop that's not that aggressive, but kind of aggressive. And then we get Fear is the Key, which kind of taps into a Kashmir meets Perfect Strangers type groove vibe that I think works really, really well. I think there's slide guitar playing on here, right? Somebody's playing some slide guitar that adds some really nice atmosphere. If it's not slide guitar, whatever they're doing, it's a really cool sound. I like this song. I think this is one of the highlights of the album. But then throughout the rest of the album, we get a lot of like slow dramatic openings into drops. The song Chains of Misery kind of reminds me of Motley Crue. Not in a good way. The album that's next on my list, there's a song that also reminds me of Motley Crue, but in a good way. The Apparition kind of has a pop metal groove that doesn't really fly for me. Judas Be My Guide is this big kind of big rock opening into kind of a high speed pop metal groove. Great energy, but I'm not sure the songwriting is up to like the stuff from the 80s for sure. Weekend Warrior is pretty much just straightforward hard rock. And then Fear of the Dark, the title track, kind of slow ballady, some nice changes throughout, but just doesn't amount to much. This is one that I liked at the time. Like I gave it a lot of time, tried to fall in love with it more than I ever have. I do think 2 songs on here are fantastic. The band is still the band. They're still Iron Maiden. You know, you still got Dickinson singing the vocals. But I'm definitely not as in love with this album as I think other people are. I don't think it's that quiet dark horse that doesn't get the love. I just think it's just kind of quiet, and overall the songs themselves are not up to par with what they were delivering in the 80s, where the musicianship is, because it's still Iron Maiden. And so that's my number two for the 90s. Now we're on to my number one, which is on the bottom of most people's list, and it's probably for the exact reasons why I like it. And my number one for the 90s, which came out in 1990, their eighth, No Prayer for the Dying. I think it's a fun album. And I think that's maybe where a lot of people don't. It's kind of fun, kind of a cheesy song. It's kind of light, but I don't know. I kind of like the energy. There's a Dickinson is bringing more of a Bon Scott, AC/DC, Brian Johnson type performance to a lot of his vocals, and I pick up AC/DC vibes every once in a while, but I also pick a lot of other vibes. Opening track Tail Gunner, which I absolutely love, kind of sounds like a BOC deep cut. Like, it's aggressive, it's got a nice medley, but it's almost like BOC aggressive. And when I say deep cut, I mean something like Vengeance, The Pact from like Fire of Unknown Origin, where it's like, that's not going to make any greatest hits packages. It's not going to get radio play, but there's probably 5 to 10% of like the BOC fandom. It's like, Vengeance, The Pack, dude, that's like my favorite song. That's the jam, right? All of these songs, Tail Gunner, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody loved that as an Iron Maiden song. It's a good little BOC deep cut. Holy Smoke has a Guns N' Roses deep cut vibe. Like, if you had dropped Holy Smoke on the latter half of Use Your Illusion 1, just let Axl sing it, put Slash playing the guitar, fits right in. Sounds like a Use Your Illusion part 1, second half of that album. Perfect, Holy Smoke. Run Silent, Run Deep has a Deep Purple Perfect Strangers vibe, which I'm all about, any Perfect Strangers vibe all the time. Hooks in You kind of reminds me of Motley Crue. A little bit of cheesy hard rock in there, but I like this. I'm okay with it. It works for me. There's cowbell action in here. I don't know why. I'm all on this one. And the one sort of song that people look to is the one that saves this album, which I think it doesn't need to be saving. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter. We got some more AC/DC energy. I mean, Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter is a straight up Bon Scott attitude type song. Like, it's all Bon Scott, right? Also, apparently it was like a Dickinson solo thing, and they had to beg him to include it on this album because they knew they needed something. They have a song called Public Enema #1. Like, let's get rid of the lyrics. Let's get rid of titles like that, not the lyrics. Political lyrics, which, let's not go political either. That's not what I need from My Maiden. We got another song called Mother Russia, which I would say dated poorly, but sadly it kind of hasn't. It's just not Russia anymore. Or it is Russia again, actually, right? Yeah, it's not the Soviet Union anymore. So yeah, so I guess we've come full circle. But yeah, it's not about, I don't think it's a bad album. Can it hold a candle to anything in the 80s? No, it can't. Are we in Bon Scott territory a lot? Yeah, we are. Is it fun? Yeah, it's fun. I don't even think I mentioned The Assassin, which I really like. Cool kind of proggy intro runs. It's not menacing enough for a song to be called The Assassin, but it's got a really, really cool vibe in it. Tail Gunner, the opener, I think is absolutely fantastic. I think it's a satisfying opening. I think this is a fun album. I understand why people don't like it, but it seems like they're channeling all the bands I loved in the 80s. And they're like, hey, AC/DC, Deep Purple, Guns N' Roses, BOC. Let's pull a little bit of their flavors in our gumbo here and see what the results are. Apparently a lot of people didn't like it. I think it tastes delicious. And not a high-end restaurant sort of way, but maybe like, hey, I was at a carnival and I got this dish of food and it's really fantastic. Got it out of a food truck. Not a current food truck, but back in the day when food trucks were, not high-end. But yeah, I like this album. I like this album. No Prayer for the Dying, yeah, that's my number one in the 90s. And I'm going to say easily. I don't know what all you haters are thinking, man. It's a fun album. But yeah, it doesn't compare to the 80s. And that is what these four look like in typewritten form. Pretty much number one was the first one released in the 90s. Number two was the second. Then we took a big drop. But then, four is number three. And then three is number four in the order they were released. Where would I rank these if I had to mix this list with the 80s list? No surprise. I literally just cut and paste this list onto the bottom of the 80s list because nothing needed to change. So yeah, that's what it currently looks like now. You have the epic run of albums in the 80s, and then hey, not everybody's perfect. Let's take a decade off, make a couple albums, and maybe we can come back in the 21st century. So that's what's next. We got 6 albums left. I'm going to do all those in one more video. Drop that, I don't know, a couple days or next week. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know why I'm wrong on Blaze's albums. Let me know why I shouldn't love No Prayer for the Dying as much as I do. Let me know where the Fear of the Dark comes in. Like how I can I've seen a lot of love for that floating around as sort of a sleeper, and I'm just not getting it. But I like to be sold on that album. I like to like music. I like to like things. But anyways, that's what I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Do those things you know you should do. And go listen to No Prayer for the Dying and realize this is not a bad album. It's just cheesier and more fun, right? Or it is supposed to be more fun. I don't know. I'm rambling. Peace. Talk to you later.